Hey everyone, welcome to the first 2025 edition of the Mean Green Gridiron podcast. We're going to be doing a little position group preview series in anticipation of the season coming up here. There's about as many position groups as there are weeks until football season starts, so that's a nice little lineup there. But I got Miles with me. Miles, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm counting down the days to fall camp and just taking it one day at a time. I'm excited. It'd be a really interesting fall camp and football season. A lot of, like you said, there's a lot of positions, and there's a lot of positions up for competition and a lot of battles. I'm expecting for a lot of positions, especially with those late spring exits. So, man, I'm pumped. This is the most excited I've been in probably Mason Fine's senior year, 2019. I mean, with the hype that this team has.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird hype where it's like, okay, you've got 7 home games, you've got like a very manageable schedule, and so like it's easy to get excited about those things, but obviously you got to take care of things like the defense first. But
Yeah.
anyways, we're gonna start with the quarterback position group. So I've got a little legend there at the top. So uh, just gonna kind of have a depth chart of what I think it's lining up to be for the season. So we've got Reese Poffenbarger. Is it Poffenbarger or Poffenbarger? How have you heard it pronounced?
Burger, yeah. It's like
Okay,
burger but burger, yeah.
okay, yeah. So Poffenbarger coming in from Miami, looks like he's gonna be the starter. Although Maker obviously could give him a push there. And then behind them, you've only got 2 other QBs on the roster. You got Chris Jimerson, the high school signee out of North Crowley, listed at 5'10" on the roster. I think Miles may contest that that measurement, but
Yeah.
from what you've seen in person there, and then Tom Von Grote, walk on returner, redshirt freshman from Byron Nelson and Trophy Club. So here's what we're looking at right now in the quarterback room. We've got career stats. Obviously, Poffenbarger, most of his stats are all at the FCS level, where he was one of the better quarterbacks in the country for Albany. Um, do you think he is going to be the guy on day one? And if you do, what are you expecting to see out of Poffenbarger this year?
Yeah, I mean, he has the leadership skill and he has the experience that you really want. And the best part, I think, for guys like Jimerson and Mestamaker is that he's a 1-year rental.
Yeah,
He's not going to enter the portal. He is just done. He's no more eligibility, which is good. You need someone like this who was behind a quarterback like Cam Ward at Miami. That was, probably a great experience for him. I think Poffenberger could start at many Group of Five schools, even some of those lower level Power Five. I think he could really start there. Obviously, it's based off of what I've seen in other games and then spring ball. But I mean, he looked like a really talented quarterback. He looked like someone that you know can learn this offense really fast. Obviously, Drew learned the offense really quick, and throw in the bowl game and had that spectacular bowl game. But I think, if you're Coach Morris, you look at this, you're in a win now situation. You need to put the vet in this unless it just completely explodes. I think that's the
yeah,
most important thing. And I think he's going to take that QB1 spot. It might be tough, and there's no bad option between those two. So it's not like
yeah,
it's not like a Stone Earl, Chandler Rogers, where it's really unknown and then there was a bad option. It's more of a, you can rely on Messmaker, who knows the offense really well, or Poffenberger, who's been in college football. Um, but now you got a whole spring under his belt, which is great. Chandler didn't get a whole spring. Chandler Morris didn't get a
right.
whole spring last year at all. So that's a big factor, and you know he has a lot. They both have a lot of good targets to throw to. This receiving room is again, pretty solid again. So whoever you pick, it shouldn't be that bad. But Poffenberger right now, I mean, we'll see in late July, early August. We'll see how he kind of is once again in a bit of a more higher volume situation. But I think he's the guy. I think he's gonna, you know, bring that that much needed skill that we kind of didn't see in Chandler Rogers or Chandler Morris in being so versatile. Morris could only do so much running wise. Chandler could only do so much throwing wise. I think you have that package deal right there. So I
Yeah.
think there's not going to be like a big question mark in the terms of how will they produce, as the quarterback, whoever they pick. I don't think there's going to be a big question mark.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think one thing that I think with Poffenbarger that I'm kind of expecting is um, Chandler Rogers and Chandler Morris were like super accurate, high completion percentage guys. Morris, up until that injury with the Tulane injury, I think he was sitting at like 66%. Rogers was 62% here. Poffenbarger for his career,
Yeah.
he's a little bit more of a he's got a solid completion percentage at 60%. But if you watch his
Mhm.
tape, man, he throws some balls downfield. Like he is not scared to take shots. I think you're gonna see some of that where when I think of air raid quarterbacks, you obviously take your shots, but when I think of air raid, I think of a lot of quarterbacks who kind of replace the run game with a lot of quick easy passes, a lot of 5-6 quick hit first down passes that just kind of keep the down and distance at good where you want it to be. So Offenbarger, I'll be interested to see how he fits with that because, like I said, I think he's more of a downfield, like kind of like how Austin Ani was, but obviously
Yeah.
higher completion percentage where it's like he's gonna take risks and he's gonna throw some incompletions by taking some risks, but can he keep the ball moving? Can he keep us in good down and distance situations? I think that's going to be something that would be interesting to see how that plays out. And like you said, Mestamaker, I think with the bowl game performance, he put himself on the map, and I think with the age of NIL kind of dictating so much, I think that's another angle that you have to look at this, how this plays out. The thing with Poffenbarger is, the rumors are that he got a nice little chunk of change to come from our NL collectives, and so he's going to be a guy who it's almost turning like NFL, where you look at last year where the
Mhm.
Falcons the Falcons got Kirk Cousins in free agency, and then they drafted Michael Penix, where it's like, okay, they signed Cousins to that contract. He's going to be the starter from day one. And the question is, how soon was Penix going to take over? Poffenbarger, he's kind of like the Kirk Cousins situation where it's like, all right, you brought him in to be your quarterback. You invested in him. He's going to be your quarterback, but then you got Mestamaker in the wings. How long do you wait that out? I think with Mestamaker, if in the event that they were to go with him from day one as a starter, I do wonder how that would play out because at his size, I mean, he's 6'4", 211. He's got wheels. We saw it in the bowl game where he had the long touchdown run. Um, do you think that's it would be a bad, I guess, a bad long-term play to start him knowing that he's probably going to put up numbers to where you won't be able to keep him after 1 year. Whereas if you play Poffenbarger this year and you get to hold on to Mestamaker one more year, then you got your next two quarterbacks right there. How do you see that kind of playing out, or how should they play that situation?
Yeah, I don't envy Coach Morris on this decision. This is hard. This is probably the hardest quarterback battle to be chosen from, and that I can really remember for UNT football. I mean, you've been here a little bit longer. You might remember uh, older days, but I mean, both, like I said, both options are great. But I think if you're Mestamaker, and this is in my mind, that you look at this season as another growing opportunity. Last year, he really shouldn't have been playing that much. You had Chandler Morris ahead of you. You're a true freshman. This year, you get to the experience of being behind another great quarterback, and you can build more because you're probably going to be the starter next year. Now, for UNT, it's going to be it's a lose lose in a way because you're going to have to pay him no matter what to either retain him or no, you to retain him. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the only real option. I mean, if wants to leave after this year, but that's also a risk for those other teams because he hadn't really played as much. But then if you start him this year and he has a great season, you're still going to pay him. They had to pay him a little bit after that bowl game because people are going after him.
Right.
And it shows it's a hot market, and North Texas is already behind the eight ball with NIL. And if you're going to be able to get a quarterback that you recruited out of high school, that you've developed, and you've done so well doing that with a lot of these freshmen and sophomores on this team right now. And a lot of them ended up leaving because you don't have the funds to pay just one person a lot of money. But for him, it needs to be like I'm thinking in their shoes because I'm almost their age, so it's like a lot of kids want the money and they want the money really quick, and they just want that greener grass, and that's probably a good thing that Mestamaker might do, just because that's the only real option. So I'm excited to see if he does start, and it's an ethical decision for Coach Morris. Do you go with the guy that you paid a lot of money for, or do you go with the guy that actually won the job? And if Messmaker does that in fall,
Right.
you just
Yeah,
don't know.
sure.
It's a big, it's a big question. We just don't know yet. But I think we're going to see probably that quarterback being chose by maybe the last week of fall camp, maybe the week before the season starts. That's
Mm-hmm.
how close I think this is. So and I think really, what, like 2023, it came down to who knew the offense more, and it was Stone Earl. And is Coach Morris going to make that decision again of who knows the offense more, and then they go in the game and they don't do as good? It's a what if, but that's the decision he made back in 2023, and it didn't work. So maybe he learned his lesson, but this is a little bit different of a situation. So for Mestamaker, I mean, I think UNT is a great fit for him. This is the offense that he would want to be in. And it's just going to be if North Texas can pony up that cash to, really keep him no matter what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, if I were running things, I think what I would say is I would play the NIL game, and I would say, all right, go with Poffenbarger. He's your guy. He's a senior. And then next year, like you said, you're going to have to pay up for Mestamaker, but at least, Poffenbarger, whatever his, salary, whatever you want to call it, comes off the books. And, then you kind of roll that into Mestamaker, and then you have him be your guy. And then after that, I do think that because he's 6'4", he's got all the tools. Like, that's gonna be tough. That's the big schools are gonna want him because, especially if he has a year starting under his belt. If he starts in 2026 and then in 2027, I think what I would do is I would say, all right, look, tell Chris Jimerson, look, we think that we think that Mestamaker is, we think he's gonna have a big year, but we don't think we're gonna be able to keep him, honestly, and just be honest with Chris Jimerson. Be like, look, we think he's gonna be gone, and then we think you're gonna be our guy. And then with Jimerson, I think the interesting angle here is that I really want to keep him because of his height. I think he can be a successful quarterback here. It's gonna be tough, but at the same time, I think it's going to scare the bigger schools off to where if Chris Jimerson is your starting quarterback and he has he comes out, let's say he's your starting quarterback in 2027 and he's a redshirt sophomore, he has a, good solid year. I think you could keep him for a, 2-3 year run at quarterback instead of having to keep doing the whole new quarterback every year thing, because I think his height might scare, bigger teams off to where you can keep that guy and actually have some stability at the quarterback position. So that's something that I think that they should keep in mind right now, especially because, he's a true freshman. He's here because the other schools wanted him at receiver. So the last thing you want to do is have him bounce after 1 year and then, Mestamaker leaves after next year. And then now you don't have either of them, in 2027. So I think for that reason, I think Jimerson actually could be kind of the long-term guy here. And look, I'd love to have Mestamaker here for 4 years. But I don't think it's a full-on cinch that he ends up being like an all-conference AAC quarterback. It's possible he has his struggles too. But again, I think the height angle with Jimerson is kind of interesting to me because I feel like that could be enough to kind of keep the other, the bigger schools from offering, what some of our other guys have gotten in recent years, and they haven't been super big quarterbacks either, Rogers and Morris, but still, taller than Jimerson.
That was the problem problem with Mason Fine. If Mason was
Right,
probably 2 inches taller, I mean, he was a loyal person, I will say, but there's no probable way that he would have been recruited out of high school to North
for
Texas and
sure.
North Texas only. I
Yeah.
think Jimerson, he was recruited, I think, to TCU for a
Yep.
receiver. And
Yeah.
I think another offer was to as a receiver, and I don't think he wanted to play that. But you know, I really don't think that we see Jimerson in at UNT by 2026. I just don't think so. I think, if Mestamaker does stick around, that's a tough competition to deal with. And, he's probably going to be that shoe-in guy. You never know. Of course, you never know. But I just don't see him having the faith in this team and program to really be the next starting quarterback. I just have a feeling that he does leave, and hopefully I'm wrong. I think he's a great player. He's probably the most quick quarterback we've seen in Texas high school history since Kyler Murray.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, he has the potential. I just don't know how much he would really stick around, but you could be right. I think he could be the future, that project that you kind of want to have, but at the same time, it feels like Mestamaker was that project that they really wanted to mold into a quarterback. He wasn't really a quarterback anyways, and they
Yeah.
molded him into a quarterback, and I feel like they're gonna put out all the stops to be able to keep him and retain Mestamaker. And really, because I think he has the potential to do it. I know that was a depleted team he played against, and there's all these different factors. But I mean, he ran what was that touchdown he ran in that bowl game?
Yeah, I think it
Um,
was about 67 yards. It was
it was a
close to
lot, and
70.
I
It
don't
might have
think
been
he's
70.
ever done that before because he threw up right after. But
Yeah.
uh, you know, but it's such a question mark, but at the same time, if you're a fan or really anyone, you should be able to trust that this coaching staff in the quarterback room can really develop and make whoever they bring in a really good player. There was still question marks for Chandler Rogers. I remember I watched him several times during fall, and I was like, "There's no way this guy's going to be playing," you
Mhm.
know. And he ended up being one of the better quarterbacks we've had recently. So.
Yeah.
Uh, the development that these coaches have put into these freshmen. While we want the transfer portal, that's what you really should be going after. They've done such a great job at doing that, and I don't think there should be any question marks for whoever they have next year. I know we're already talking about next year, and it's not even this year yet, but um,
Right.
there is a bright future for this group. And as long as Brophy's still there, I mean, he's a hot commodity, especially if he can get, whoever starts this year another great year. I'd be surprised if he's still here next year. It's such a,
Or he
Texas has
might
always
have
been
an
a
offensive
landing pad.
coordinator title.
Yeah,
You might
that
have to
is
give him
true.
an OC title to keep him, so something kind of like that.
Give him a little pay raise.
Right.
I know Morris calls all the shots, but
Right.
a pay raise. That's how you keep someone. But um, yeah, I think we should be more worried about keeping Skylar Cassidy for one season than
Yeah.
keeping anyone else. But that's a whole different story. But I mean, like I said, this is a great group of quarterbacks, no matter what. So an injury happens, you're going to be set for the next series on the field if someone does go down with an injury. So it's not like there's going to be this huge. Yeah, I love Quinn Shambor, one of my favorite people that's ever played for North Texans. But whenever Mason Fine would go down, I would be shaking in scaredness at what would happen for the next drive. You know, so you have that option. So I mean,
Or
even
even a
at
year
Jimerson,
ago, before we knew what we had in Mestamaker, it was like, Chandler Morris went down. It was like, okay, our backup's a walk-on true freshman who was playing
and
safety last year.
and I heard great things about him. I mean, I heard I
Right.
mean, he outcompeted Cash McCollum, a guy that everyone thought would be that second guy.
Right.
So I mean, it was just like, well, you're playing against one of the better teams in the conference, and it's like middle of the game, you're getting blown out. It just didn't seem like a good idea. But He showed it, and I think this is an opportunity year. And if Messamaker really does beat him out, you can't be that mad. You can't be
Yeah.
that mad that you. Now, if you're Reese, I would be kind of upset, but that's more of a you issue than it is a coaching issue. Um, but man, I mean, I've never been more confident in the quarterback room. I don't think in a long time. It's been a long time since I've been this confident.
Yeah. And I will say, I think if I had to rank them, and this is, obviously Poffenbarger hadn't played a snap yet for us, but
Yeah.
if I had to rank them, I think I would have him third behind Morris and Rogers. If we're talking about quarterbacks in the Eric Morris era, I think I'd have him third behind that group, but it's close, and I think they're all kind of on a similar level. Like I said, I think Poffenbarger is a little bit less accurate, just kind of watching some of his game tape, a little bit less accurate than those guys, but he's got a big arm for a 6 foot dude. He can take deep shots downfield, like deep shots, not just, 30, 40 yards down the sideline. I mean, he's putting the ball 50 air yards in the air easily in a lot of his tape. And then he's also, I think he might be the fastest, like you were talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
Chandler Rogers had some good speed too when he got going, but he didn't tend to run it a lot. But when
And
he
he had
got,
no awareness.
oh
Aaron
yeah,
Rodgers had no awareness of
yeah,
anything.
yeah, pocket, definitely took some really ill-advised sacks, but um, I will say he had a few runs like I think Navy, and then that one against Tulsa where he ran into you.
He almost ran me over. I think that was the
Yeah,
most scared I've been in a football game.
yeah, we were all like, "Hey, Miles." But anyways, yeah, I think Poffenbarger. If I had to predict right now, I would say statistically, I don't. I think he'll be maybe a little bit behind Rogers and Morris. Rogers had about 3,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 5 picks, and then Morris had 37, almost 3,800 yards, 31 touchdowns, 12 picks. So I think Poffenbarger might not have the prettiest. I think his stats by the end of the year will be comparable, but not quite as glowing as those guys. But I do think he's a solid AAC quarterback, and with our schedule, I think one benefit that Poffenbarger hopefully will have is that he'll have a much better defense than either of those two quarterbacks had. So that's
Yeah. You
that makes a
stole
big difference.
exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. I mean, and when you have a defense, you're not having to, do hurry ups. And Coach Morris emphasized that during spring. And I asked him, I was like, you guys ran a lot of hurry ups last year, and it's a lot of quick pace. Do you feel like that's still gonna be the same thing going into this year? And he said no, because we're gonna trust our defense more. And I felt like
Yeah,
last year, especially those fourth downs, and you could obviously a coach is not gonna say it, but at the
yeah,
same time, I was like, well, you're going for it on 4th and 8 at your own inside your own territory, and I think this year, if you can just get those stops, you're able to win football games. And Poffenberger throws the ball a lot. And I
mm,
felt he's been throwing the ball a lot this year because you look at the running back room, you don't really have a piece that's like standing out and that's going to be, in my opinion. Now I could hopefully I'm totally wrong, but you really haven't had a running back that is just like, he's going to really control the ground.
right,
And Morrison like to run the ball as much. So I think we're going to see a lot of Poffenberger passes,
yeah,
and I think you're going to have better opportunities to win these games because there have been times where you're outnumbering the opposing team in yards and you're still losing.
right,
You're losing by a touchdown or more, and I think that's kind of what hurt this team, and especially 2023. I mean, you're 4 stops away from winning 8, 9 games. You could be competing for a conference title if you just get a few stops during some of these games. So that's gonna be the biggest thing, and maybe, and with the stops, I mean, you're keeping your offense off the field a little bit longer. You're able to get them some rest. There was sometimes last year. Well, I guess in the Army game, the defense was on the field for about 14 minutes, but
yeah,
uh, it was so quick. You'd have a lot of quick touchdowns, and you just were always behind a wall. It felt like. So I feel like this is a better opportunity. And when you have receivers like Miles Coleman, who's played a full season last year, stepped up in a big role. You have Simeon Evans. You have Cameron Dorner. I'm really high on both those guys. Um, he should be successful. Whoever is starting quarterback should be successful. But I mean, I'm pretty. He had in 2023. I mean, he was averaging 41 passing attempts a game,
Uh-huh.
and that's at the FCS level. Imagine what he can do with this type of team that he has now. Albany was great, but this is probably a better offense, and you're going against better teams. So and the best part about it is you don't have to play Memphis or Tulane.
Right.
Gives you a little bit of a breather. So, and you get some good teams at home. So I mean, I'm excited to see the explosiveness that we've seen these past 2 years translate into this group of quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the one kind of last thing I'll say about this group is that I think with Poffenbarger or Mestamaker, if your defense is where it should be, I think either of these guys are gonna, should be able to win you 8 games with the schedule, and that's a nice thing to have where you can whichever choice you make, like you said, yeah, it's a hard choice. Yeah, you don't envy Coach Morris for having to pick one of these guys, but I think either way, it could be one of those things where whoever you pick, it's going to be a good choice. With like you said with Stone Earl and Chandler Rogers, he picked wrong and it was a bad choice.
Yeah.
It bit him. Whereas you either one of these guys, whoever you pick, I think will make him look good and make it look justified decision. So hopefully whoever it is, I think one of the small little added benefits, I think if they were to go with Poffenbarger, is that kind of like we saw in the bowl game for Texas State last year, they had a senior quarterback. You have a senior quarterback, you've got a good chance in a bowl game because with a lot of these other G5 schools, if they have an underclassman quarterback, he might be hitting the portal before you play the bowl game.
Yeah.
So, obviously that happened with us. Chandler Morris hit the portal before our bowl game. But you got a guy like Poffenbarger. No more transfer portal. He's you
Yeah.
get to have your senior quarterback for the bowl game, and we all know how badly we need a bowl win here.
Yeah. And you can't really, opt into LinkedIn and have a LinkedIn interview. You can't really do
Right.
that. So you could, but that would be a really, that'd be a North Texas thing to happen. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think this is the year that you have the right pieces, and I think Coach Morris, being 2 years into this tenure, I think he's learned most of his lessons that have really hurt this team over the past 2 years. And you can't control the transfer portal because you just don't have, the funds to do it. You can't control what kids think. But if you can have a successful season and you can win 8, 9 games, play for a conference championship, play and win a bowl game. I mean, that sticks with a lot of kids. I
Yeah.
really think it does. And if you're a successful program, people might not leave to go to a Rutgers or go to Virginia or go to schools that aren't even going to compete in their own bigger conference.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
I think, and we've that's what happened in basketball. Best example, these guys took pay cuts to stay at North Texas, and it was because they liked the school, they liked the program, they liked the culture, they were winning. And
Mhm.
if you can have that again, I mean, if you had that in football, I mean, they haven't had this much success in football in a long time. So, I mean, I imagine the transfer portal was a thing in 2018. I don't think we would see these issues. I
Yeah.
really don't. So, because you were winning, you were playing good football. So it's a win now, and I think this will be the most talented quarterback room I think North Texas might have ever seen. Can't think of a time where, I mean, Alec Morris was not that good back in 2016. So, you know, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good solid room and good position group. I think to start the series on a lot of meat on the bones here to talk about, and hopefully you learned something, Miles. Appreciate the insight. Anything you want to plug? I know haven't plugged the North Texas Eagle. I know you guys are doing a lot of stuff. It's you guys have been putting out a good amount of stuff here during this little kind of summer lull where it's, right around the corner.
Yeah, we're trying to get, talk to some players and get some one-on-ones, and we're doing a mailbag. Anybody listening, submit their questions. And also, I think another big thing is not Eric Morris. Jared Mosley is doing a town hall. I don't know if it was promoted that much. I really didn't see it promoted that much, but I saw it in my email and I was told about it. Submit good questions and get Jared to answer those questions. I think it's next Tuesday. I would submit them by, I think submit them by Friday. It's important. This is a big time for North Texas. There's a lot of things going on, and always subscribe to the North Texas Eagle. I think
Yeah.
this football
On
season we're going to
Patreon.
be pumping out a lot of content. I'm going to all the games again, so all those
Nice.
road press conferences that nobody sees, you'll be seeing, no matter win or loss. So let's hope those road press conferences are a little bit better than the last few years. So I'm excited. This should be a very fun season, and you get your first test 4th week of the year, so I'm pumped.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thanks, Miles, and go Mean Green.
Yeah, go Mean Green.